J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
And hello, and welcome in. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. It's the Game Show Guys. I'm Tom Bastek.
And I am Mike Jacobs. Welcome to you all. Welcome, Tom. How has your week been treating you?
It's been a swell week, I guess.
Yeah, fantastic. Glad
I haven't used the word swell in like 40 years.
I don't think anybody has.
Oh, great. Thanks, man. I'm so old. I'm just so old. It's fine.
I mean, the only time I ever remember hearing the word swell in any real context was on Nick at Night when I was a kid, so...
All right, Mrs. Cleaver.
Yep,
how's your week been?
It's been swell, you know.
All right, great. Do we have any housekeeping today?
I don't think we do, other than to say, I do want to bring up a quick thing. Someone gave us a review on Apple Podcasts, I believe it was.
Okay.
And stating that we often get things wrong, and that is a reason to not listen to this show. And I would just like to address that real quick and say that is exactly why we're doing this show, is because we're not experts. We're just two guys vamping about game shows, talking about what we like, giving our opinions. I mean, yeah, we're trying to give some information about the show, but we're not meant to be encyclopedic knowledge of a show.
Right.
So, you know, I feel like it's a little unfair to rate us low instead of just letting us know what we got wrong. We're happy to address our shortcomings and issue adjustments when necessary, but just let us know.
The other thing is that we've never claimed to be anything but two guys vamping about game shows.
Exactly.
And if you don't like that, that's great.
Right.
It's no reason to give us a 1-star or 2-star review.
I agree.
But at the end of the day, I don't care. Because you know what, Mike, I enjoy having you here, and I do enjoy our many people who comment and listen and write us, and they're enjoying the show. So,
well, absolutely. And
great.
I don't want to sound like I'm all sour grapes about this, because we definitely get far more good feedback than bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a bummer that it's a publicly facing, Apple review. But what are you going to do? At the end of the day, does it really matter? Probably not.
Probably not. I'm not going to worry about it. What I am going to worry about is being able to stump the chump.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm already brainstorming what we're going to do for next week. But let's go to the news and find out if we can get them this week first.
Yep, let's do it.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike. This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. Rare occurrence on yesterday's Jeopardy. We had a rare two-way tie, which has only happened, I think I can count on one hand the number of times that that's happened on the show. So yesterday's episode, we had two contestants, one the returning champion, ending the game with $18,800 before Final Jeopardy. Turns out they wagered the same amount, ended up in a tie after Final Jeopardy. And what a lot of people don't know, what more people know now because it happened, is when that happens, there's one sudden death clue on the buzzer, and whoever buzzes in first with the right response wins the game. So I'm going to read. I have the clue that they used for the tiebreaker yesterday.
Can we buzz in?
Sure. Why not?
Your name is your buzzer, Tom.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. So the category was history, and the clue was: in October 1961, Stalin's body was removed from display in this other man's tomb.
No clue.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
So Lenin.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
That's actually what I would have guessed, but I would not have wanted to lose Jeopardy on that guess.
Yeah.
It's a slow burn. It's one of those ones that takes you a second. But yeah, so the returning champion got the answer right. He is now a 4-day champion. 88,102 is his winnings, and he'll be back on Monday to play again. But yeah, again, does not happen very often on Jeopardy, but when it does, it's a pretty rare occurrence. They even kind of teased it on their social media. They said, hey, something crazy happens on today's show, and they were not wrong.
I think Ken Jennings is doing a pretty good job.
Oh, he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job. I really like him.
I have to imagine that most of the time when a tie occurs, it's because both people have wagered everything and gotten it wrong, right? Like that would be the most common.
Usually. There's this strategy that, if you're in second place, you wager enough to like cover the difference between you and first place or something like that. Like the wagering in Final Jeopardy has really gotten down to an exact science. So
Gotcha.
yeah, usually it is that people just kind of bet to cover their difference and they end up with the same number.
That makes more sense too, because I'm thinking like I can't imagine it would just so happen that like two people at different dollar levels would wager enough so they would equal out. But yeah, that definitely makes more sense. I'm not good at math, so we should just move on.
And I'll just mention real quick, the second ever episode of this current version, there was a 3-way tie at 0, and everybody went home, and they brought 3 completely new contestants the next day.
Wow. You're all losers. Goodbye.
Right?
I guess that's what happens.
Flush it and go to the next one.
End with 0. Yeah, I'll teach you to embarrass our damn show.
Wow. Cool. What else you got for us?
Well, this is on the same subject. We're going to talk about Jeopardy, and this is news that I consider important, as well as anybody who may be interested in the history of this kind of thing. So on YouTube, it's been recently unearthed 5 minutes of audio from the very first episode of Jeopardy on NBC back in March of 1964. And it's fascinating. One, because a lot of people had no idea that any record of that existed. Those tapes were erased years ago.
Right.
And there are still a couple that exist in museums and things, but for the large part, we'll never see that era of Jeopardy again. Second, the vibe of the game is so different. Originally when the show premiered, and I mentioned it several times, I'll make a quick mention of it again, it was a play on the idea that back in the 50s, during the quiz show scandals, contestants were given the answers. So this was promoted as this new game show where contestants are given the answers. And little did they know when they tuned in that they also now had to come up with the questions. It was this twist on the regular, sort of question and answer thing. And it was almost played for laughs. Like, it was a very light game. Even the host makes fun of one of the contestants' country accents mercilessly. And it's just a really funny sort of game. And it's nowhere near the really difficult quiz show that it became known for being years later. But yeah, I just thought it was super fascinating, and it's on YouTube if anybody wants to check it out.
That's cool. We'll grab the link and throw it out on the website this week. All right, Christian, what about this week in game show history?
Well, this week in game show history, we are talking about one of Tom's favorites, Wink Martindale.
Yeah.
And this is a show that premiered in 1970 this week, and one of only two new game shows to premiere in 1970, both of them hosted by Wink Martindale. This one we're talking about is called Can You Top This? Now, this was a comedy-based game based on a radio show that was on for a really long time. And essentially what would happen is there would be a resident comedian that would tell a joke, and the audience would laugh, and there was a laugh meter, measuring how much the audience was laughing on a scale of 1 to 100. So the joke that the comedian told was always sent in by a listener, or in this case, a viewer. And then they had a panel of 3 comedians that would tell a joke, and they would try to top that score. And if the person who sent in the joke won, they'd get some prize, and if they didn't, then they didn't. But it was really just an excuse for Maury Amsterdam, Wink Martindale, and a bunch of comedians to screw around and laugh at each other for a while. A really fun show. Only one episode of it exists, and I think that's on YouTube as well. But
God, Mike would hate that show.
Why? Why would you hate it?
No, I just the whole thing of our back and forth is that I typically, like with Hollywood Squares and Match Game, I don't like the shows where it's just kind of celebrities patting themselves on the back and goofing around. I like games. I like game shows. I like the interaction with the contestant, and they just feel very, I can't think of a better term than circle jerky.
I understand. I got you. Yeah, this was, again, they were giving prizes to the people watching, and, the audience was really heavily involved. But yeah, I guess I can see what you mean. It was very, especially for that era of comedy back in the late 60s, early 70s, like that sort of old boys club.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's what it was. That's what television was.
Not kidding.
Ugh, God, awful. All right, it's that time. Mike, do you have a question for us for this week for Stump the Chump?
I do. Our old pal Brian has submitted us another double header, but you're getting off easy this week, Christian, because by sheer coincidence, his first question was about tic-tac-toe, which we did last week. Okay. So we already talked about Tom McKee and his record-breaking 43 games in a row.
Right.
So this second parter is the only part you have to get right, but it is another record breaker, and he specifies non-rigged, as in legitimate game show before all the scandals. I don't know that needs specifying, but so we want the first contestant to win 20 consecutive games on a U.S. game show, and the name of the game show on which they achieved that record.
Wow.
Okay. All right, here we go. Now, I will preface this by saying I am not 100% sure.
Okay. We may have it. There's a chance we may have it. All right.
I'm gonna hazard a guess. And I don't know if this was the first, but it's pretty early in terms of the history of game shows and television, so I'm going to guess that this was the first. Now, there's a show that I grew up with in some ways. It wasn't on the air when I was younger, but there's a show on NBC that was on for almost 20 years called Concentration, where you had to match up prizes, and the prizes would go away. There was a picture puzzle underneath. Now,
Sure.
They had a rule where a contestant could win no more than 20 games before they were retired, and they had what they called the Challenge of Champions every year, and they gave away a statue and a trophy and all that. So there was a contestant named Mrs. Ruth Horowitz, and I'm pretty sure she won 20 games, and she was the first contestant to win 20 games on the show. I'm almost positive she won the championship that year as well. She was like a world-class concentration player, but that'll be my guess. Mrs. Ruth Horowitz on Concentration.
I am going to go ahead and say that I don't think there is anything in my notes about this answer that you did not mention. So there you go.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember if you said the exact year. It was 1966, but
I didn't say the year. I figured it was sometime in the 60s, but I did not say the year.
okay.
Wow.
Well, then that's the only thing I can get on you is that it was 66. But yes, that is 100% correct. Ruth Horowitz, 20 games in a row in Concentration, and then indeed went on to win the Challenge of Champions.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. How
There
did
it is.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, there it is. Brian, no more questions from you.
I appreciate him sending it in, though. That was a good one. I got to tell you, you had me for a second.
We have not been getting as many as I would think, and I think the reason is because they're now listening to you answer all of these questions, Christian, and they're like, they don't have anything that's tough enough for you.
Well, there has to be somebody out there.
Yeah.
So the Challenge of Champions every year for Concentration, one of the prizes, in addition to a trip around the world, they would give away a statue of Rodin's Thinker. That was the trophy.
Sorry, I just thought of the Godzilla monster, Rodan, when you said that, and I was like, wow, a statue of Rodan. That's awesome.
That would be so kick-ass. No, so
Oh, my God. Okay, go ahead.
So they give away a copy of The Thinker. That was their trophy. And years previously, on the old Price is Right with Bill Cullen, one of the prizes once was an actual copy of Rodin's Thinker signed by the artist himself. And there were only one of 12 in existence, and that was given away as a prize. Can you imagine owning that today?
Wow.
That's amazing.
Incredible, right?
That is nuts. And it was a prize given away. Holy cow.
Prize, yeah. Art was a big thing for on game shows for a couple years. Even shows like Hollywood Squares and High Rollers and things, they would give away like signed like Dali lithographs and Picasso lithographs and things like that, which would be incredibly valuable today. But they were just given away as prizes.
I think that's kind of the thing, is that it makes sense in the fact that it's probably relatively inexpensive to obtain, but it's a thing that appreciates in value. So it's like you give it to someone, and at the time it's, valued at X, but then over 15 years it all of a sudden appreciates greatly in value.
Right. Oh, it's like winning gold. The price of
Right.
gold has been way, way, way up recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the pandemic had something to do with that too, I think, too.
Yeah. Yep.
Christian, this week we're doing Singled Out as our featured show. Thoughts?
MTV has only done a few studio game shows in their history, Remote Control being one of the huge ones. But with Singled Out, they really proved that they had a handle on the formula for a game show that appeals to that crowd. I mean, Singled Out, you had 50 single people vying for the attention of one contestant, and visually it makes for a really interesting show. And I loved Chris Hardwick. I think that was probably his first on-air gig, at least his first national exposure, before he went on to things like Talking Dead and At Midnight and all the other stuff he's done. But yeah, I used to love that show, and I think I was younger, so I didn't really have an understanding of a lot of the double entendres and things on the show when I watched it, but I remember being fascinated by it. Really cool show.
Do you have any input or knowledge or opinions on the fact that it may or may not have been rigged?
I don't have any knowledge of it. I mean, when it comes to relationship shows, I'm not really sure what constitutes rigging, like what the difference is between rigging and scripting. And I don't know legally how they would get away with one over the other. I don't have any knowledge of it, but have you heard anything?
Okay. Well, when it was around, that was a big rumor, was that they I don't know, had somebody in mind already at the end, and they would formulate the questions and answers so that person was picked. And I suppose, again, this is like schoolyard talk in middle school, but the idea was that it was someone who, I don't know, had some sort of career to promote or some reason why they wanted to be picked, and there was some sort of mutual benefit, and it was apparently there was some formula to it, and if you figured out the formula, you could see who was going to win and all this kind of stuff. I don't remember the details, but again, schoolyard talk, so I'm sure there's nothing to it, but it's just something that's always stuck in my mind.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, MTV being such an image-conscious network, especially in the early to late, like the mid to late 90s.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me, but I know nothing of that. Interesting, though.
I'm going to look into it more as we do our research this week.
Yeah, that's just amazing to me. I mean, to be honest, it's tough to, if you have a question like, okay, redhead, blonde, or brunette, and the person has to eliminate one of them. Like, how do you say to them, okay, well, they say blonde, and the person who you wanted to win is blonde? Like, I just find it very difficult if there was a possibility of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but
interesting.
Again, that was the rumor in our little 7th grade rumor mill at the time.
Nice. I love the 7th grade rumor mill. Okay, great. Christian,
that's where I get all my game show information from. I have an army of 7th graders.
I love that. I absolutely love that. All right, how about a plug for Buzzer Blog?
Of course, buzzerblog.com, the #1 game show website in the world, whether you're looking for reviews, information on new series, returning series from back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Buzzerblog.com is the place to go. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Christian. We'll see you next week.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Once again, if you'd like to submit a question that Christian will already know the answer to, please email it or send it via social.
It's so true. Like, at this point, I really don't think it's going to happen. I mean, it's got to happen eventually, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I literally, we're going to have to start getting to, like, what kind of hair dye did Alex Trebek use from the years 1974 to 1976?
Here's what I want to do. I just now thought of this. I want to reach out to the other guys at Buzzer Blog and see if they have any inside tips on weaknesses, like maybe a show he doesn't really know about, or
I like it.
Yeah, getting some Lex Luthor strategy up in here.
Yeah, I mean, we need something. I mean, anything. This guy is really, really good. And when I brainstormed this idea up, I thought, okay, let's just. He's got a pretty good knowledge of stuff, but he's really got an encyclopedic knowledge of things. It's just insane.
It's gone beyond all of my expectations. I think we've mentioned this before, that like we kind of expected, like, oh no, what if we like stump him on the first one and it's going to be like a dud of a bit, and yeah,
instead it's been the exact opposite.
Right?
We are the chumps every week. Yep. I mean, every single week.
I mean, in all fairness, though, as we've said, we are not professionals. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Sure. Well, we're going to have to dig deep for next week. That's for sure.
Indeed.
All right, this week's featured game show, as we talked about with Christian, is Singled Out. We have gameplay, or if you want to call it that.
Well, it's interesting. Christian was talking about how much of a fun show it was and whatnot. I don't know that he's rewatched it since it aired.
Since originally.
I do not have a lot of good things to say about this show.
Well, I remember it, and I watched it back in the day, and I think I recall enjoying it. I didn't get any of those vibes this time.
I was trying to figure out what vibe I got when I first watched it, like when it was new. And I was in like maybe early high school at that point, freshman, sophomore, somewhere around there. And I don't remember liking it, but I don't remember disliking it. And I definitely remember watching it, but I don't remember having like any opinion on it. I don't remember thinking it was cool. I remember thinking at the time that Jenny McCarthy was hot, I guess.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like, I don't know. I don't know what I thought about it, but I do now.
All right, well, we'll talk about the gameplay of Singled Out that's coming up next. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won.
Right here we have 50 single women. Right here we have 50 single guys. That's right, 100 love-starved people looking for a taste of romance on MTV's Singled Out. And now your host, Chris Hardwick.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome, Chris.
I love you so much. Welcome to Singled Out.
That there is the theme song to Singled Out.
I don't understand why you said it that way, but I'm on board.
I don't know. It just came out of my mouth that way. I have no idea why. But there it is. That's the theme song there to Singled Out. It's our featured game show this week, and Mike is now, as we do each and every week, going to discuss the gameplay of this week's featured show.
Indeed, the gameplay. Well, so we break the game up into 3 rounds, ultimately. So what's going to happen here is we're going to start with a pool of 50 either men or women, whichever one they want to start with. Those are all, I suppose, the contestants who will be, as the title indicates, singled out. And then we introduce the sort of main contestant of the show who is of the opposite gender. In other words, if there's 50 men in the pool, they pull out a woman to play, vice versa. And this contestant that they pull out is known as the picker. And basically the picker is going...
The Picker.
The picker.
Yeah.
Yes,
like,
they are picking...
that is a horrible name.
Yeah. I mean, because really, when you think of picking, like 3 things come into mind. And 1 is nose, 2 is zits, 3 is butt, right? None of that is good stuff.
Yeah, or antiques.
Well, okay, true.
They may be good things. They may also not be good things. But
That's
anyway,
true.
okay.
That's
Okay,
true.
so go ahead. The Picker.
All right, so yes, the idea is that the picker is whittling down this pool of 50 opposite-gendered people to figure out who they will be going on a date with. So the first round, they are presented with a board of 6 different categories, and then each category is a sort of either-or question, which ultimately boils down to, like, tall or short, blonde or brunette, you know, like... I don't know, long legs or short. That was one of them, which was weird. But they're not, like, asked in that literal of a way. They're always some sort of humorous, double entendre, suggestive manner, usually with, like, some sort of pop culture reference, something like that. You know, I mean, it's MTV. They got to sort of hip it up and make it all slick and clever.
Right.
And then, so, like I say, of these either-or questions, the picker chooses which one of them they want. In other words, if you say blonde or brunette and the person is into blondes, they will say, I'm going to get rid of the brunettes. And then all of the brunettes in the pool are then marched out of the studio in front of the picker so that he sees who is eliminated.
Or she didn't get, yeah.
Right, correct, yes. And sort of a walk of shame, if you will. And of course, when all the contestants walk by, they give them a sort of like, oh, you missed out big time on me, sort of look, or maybe a quick quip or something like that.
Right.
In later seasons, they introduced a golden ticket, which was that as the walk of shame is happening, the picker has the ability to give someone a golden ticket, and they are not eliminated. They like immediately go on to the sort of semifinals.
Huh, okay.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, there's one episode I watched where the person who got the golden ticket ended up winning the show overall. So
wow.
There you go. So basically, they just continue with these either-or questions until the pool of 50 is whittled down to somewhere between 5 and 8 people remaining. Once that happens, you hear a big bell ring, and they go on to round 2. Round 2 is the dating game. there's really no difference between round 2 and the dating game. The picker is asking a series of questions to individual contestants. He chooses a contestant that he wants to ask to. And then, of course, suggestive overtones are abound in all these questions, but it's dating game style questions, like I call you to come over, make the sound that your car is going to make when you're driving over, or, what are we doing on our first date, that sort of stuff. Often these questions will have a short sketch accompanying with them. Again, think along the lines of Remote Control, the same sort of interstitial sketches there, or maybe even Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. And a lot of times these, like I said with the car example, it involves the contestant doing something very stupid or embarrassing, something to kind of make them look silly on TV. And then based on the answer that the contestant that they have chosen gives, they will then decide to either keep them or dump them. If they keep them, they will move on to the next round. If they're dumped, they are eliminated, of course. And then this continues until 3 people are kept or all but 3 are dumped. So in other words, they're trying to get down to 3, and they do it by either keeping them or dumping everybody else.
Okay.
And then this now moves us on to round 3. Round 3 is a cross between the Newlywed Game and the Steps of Knowledge, if you recall from Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Okay.
The picker is seated in sort of like a inner circle, a winner's circle, if you will, and facing away from the contestants, of course. It's worth noting that the contestants and the contestant who is the picker has not seen anybody in the pool yet. They come out blindfolded, and they're facing away from them the entire time. So again, facing away from them, and the 3 remaining contestants are put on a staircase leading up to that person. Then the host, Chris Hardwick, will ask A-B sort of questions. In other words, I think one of them was R&B. Was it rhythm and blues or rotten and bad? And it's basically just, do you like rhythm and blues or not? And then so all 3 contestants will give their answer, and then the picker reveals what answer they gave. And then whoever matches that answer takes 1 step forward on this little staircase, the steps of knowledge, if you will. This continues until one of the person reaches the inner circle, and then that person is the winner. They win a date with the picker. They are put back to back, and of course a dramatic reveal where they see each other and hug, and they get some sort of crazy fancy date that they both get to go on together. And that's the end of the first round. I guess that's the end of the first 3 rounds, the first game. And then the second game, you just roll it back and do the exact same thing, but swap the gender roles, where you start with a pool of 50 whatever you didn't have the first time. If it was men the first time, you go to women the second time, or swap it around. And that's singled out. You just basically play a more complicated dating game.
Just from the sounds of it, assuming I had never seen it before, it doesn't sound that bad. It's actually kind of cool.
Well, I don't disagree with you, I guess. I'm not a big fan of the dating game and the Newlywed Game and Love Connection and all those kind of dating shows.
The Newlywed Game I really like. And when we do the Newlywed Game, we'll talk about that. The dating games, Love Connection, any of those games, I am not a fan of any of those shows. And I'm also not a fan of any of the now reality shows like The Bachelor and things like that. I'm not. But the premise, just listening to that is like, hey, that's not so bad. Then why did it suck so bad?
Well, I don't think it sucked at the time. Obviously, it was very popular, as we'll talk about in the history.
Yeah, and again, I think I remember it fondly, honestly.
I felt like I did. I at least certainly didn't remember as disfondly as I experienced it this time. And I think a lot of it is the approach, specifically in today's society. I don't think that their double entendres, the tone of the show is something that would latch on with audiences. I also feel like the very, I guess, shallow, dismissive nature of it is something that is not, I guess, in tune with what young culture today is. Now,
Right.
obviously, I'm saying this as an almost 40-year-old man, so what the hell do I know about young people culture? But just the feeling I got from watching this show, it was so cringy the entire time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like it was painful to watch, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk more about it when we get to the ratings. It'll be interesting to see how we rate this one. But that's up after the history, which is up next.
Yeah, and before we jump into the history, there's one other quick thing I wanted to touch on that I didn't notice, but my wife pointed out to me that I thought was very interesting. In the end credits, it says something about how female contestants will be provided a chaperone upon request. In other words, if you get a date with a dude who's like, oh God,
Creepy?
I don't want to go on a date with this guy,
Yeah.
you could just request a chaperone and have it just be, I don't know, not really a date.
Wow, that's interesting. That's very interesting. All right, when we come back, we'll talk history of Singled Out. It's our featured game show on America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And welcome back. It's episode number 33. This is segment number 3. A featured game this week is Singled Out.
Yes, indeed. Singled Out starting on July 5th, 1995 on MTV. And as I say that sentence, I think I understand why this show took off as much as it did. I mean, that is smack dab in the middle of the 90s. MTV it can do no wrong at that point, right? Like,
This is true. Yeah.
yeah, this is like the peak of MTV culture. At least in my experience, that's when I was in it.
Some people would say that the peak was actually in the 80s when it was nothing but videos all the time.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think that's when it was at its best, but maybe not at its peak popularity.
Well, yeah, no, I think that, it got into the whole game show, then, reality TV and really expanded its growth. And that's all definitely mid 90s. That's for sure.
For sure. So we have Chris Hardwick as the host, as I mentioned earlier, and Jenny McCarthy as the co-host. She is the one that is in the pool of contestants, sort of facilitating the interviews on that end. And like we say, this is the real heyday of the show. It proved very popular for MTV to the point where I had even forgot about this, but the little Cupid MTV logo that's on the logo of the show, he sits on top of the heart. I remember that even being kind of a icon for MTV in general during that time.
Huh.
I tried to find a little bit of information on ratings. I have to imagine that at some point this was one of the top rated shows on MTV. It not only did it span several international versions, but I don't know if you remember this, Tom. I remember it happening, but there was a book. It's called The Singled Out Guide to Dating. I did not actually read the book. I don't know anything about it. I have to imagine it is just a pile of hot garbage.
Yeah, the only thing I remember about it was it had Hardwick on one cover, and if you flip the book over, it had Jenny McCarthy on the other, on the back cover.
Yeah, like a little double cover thing.
Right. And I think it was. I don't know much about it. I never read it, but from what I understand, it was just interviews with people after they had gone on their dates.
Oh, about the show?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not even really a guide to dating.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, good for them for making it, I guess. So then, what is this? A couple of years later, 1997, Jenny McCarthy leaves. She goes on to host her own show, which was a sitcom called Jenny, appropriately enough. I don't remember it. I also don't care because I feel like she's a garbage human being. You're going to hear me say the word garbage a lot in the next segment of this show. So yeah, she left. Cool. She's not on the show anymore. She would honestly, if you watch the episodes on YouTube with her, she's annoying. She's not even good. I guess she's high energy and attractive in the very typical thin blonde sort of way. But I mean, she is not good on the show. she's just super hyperactive and annoying and like keeps like Chris Hardwick kind of dogs on her a little bit from time to time, being like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. And for his part, I really like Chris Hardwick on this show. I haven't seen much of the other things he's been on since, but clearly he has made a name for himself because he's all over the place.
Yeah, I didn't really remember him, and then I remembered that he was hosting The Wall, and I was like, oh yeah, so I guess he has been around all this time. But yeah, it really is interesting because when you say this is a garbage show, it really is a garbage show. Like it's right in the middle of MTV's trail of garbage shows.
Well, to me, it's the term popped in my head the other day, decline of civilization. Like, that's kind of what this show brings to my mind. Like, I know that's hyperbolic, but it is that bad, honestly.
No, but I have to tell you, like, to me, this doesn't hold up. I have zero desire to watch any more of this. Like, I struggled to get through the one episode that I watched of it.
I totally agree. But while we're talking about Chris Hardwick and Jenny McCarthy, I would be remiss if I did not bring up Chris Hardwick's hair. He had the popular 90s, I guess you could call it a butt cut, but that middle part that like cascades down. And man, as a teenager in 1995, that was the coolest hair in the world.
Maybe not. I don't know. I was not a big fan, but okay, go ahead.
Fair enough. Jenny McCarthy leaves. She is replaced by Carmen Electra for the last season of the show in 98, or 97/98. It's not really her breakout role. Obviously, she was on Baywatch before that, but I do think that this was a huge boon for her popularity overall. I don't know much of her career. I didn't like research it, but I remember this being like one of the first real things I knew her from. Obviously, I didn't watch Baywatch that much.
Sure.
I say obviously. I guess as a teenage boy, I probably should have been, but no, I definitely remember her from this show, and then all of a sudden she was all over the place.
Right.
So that ran until my birthday in 1998, May 22nd. I didn't find any specific reasons for why it left, but I have to imagine just the cultural zeitgeist got sick of it, right? Like,
well, I mean, yeah, because remember, there's also the period of time where like they would cancel shows MTV would. They would cancel shows even at the peak of their highness, the peak of their popularity because. Like we talked about Remote Control, it had great ratings all the way up until when they canceled it, and they just canceled it because they needed to stay fresh.
They wanted that next cool thing, yeah.
Right, so they just can that and move on, and that could be what happened with this one as well.
Well, and yeah, I mean, maybe it was also the sort of idea of leave them wanting more. It's like we don't want to run this into the ground. We'll end it when it's on its high, so people will fondly remember it, I guess.
Yeah, cool.
But I mean, yeah, that was it. There was a new version in 2018, but that was on MTV's YouTube channel. It was hosted by Justina Valentine, who is a musician / rapper that I know nothing about. And then the co-host was another rapper who goes by the name Conceited. I also know nothing about them. I'm old and out of touch. Can't tell you anything about them. And then apparently
it bothers me they made a remake of the show, but okay, go ahead.
Right? Well, and that's the thing. First of all, it went straight to YouTube, so clearly they did not have high hopes for it. But I cannot imagine that today's culture would latch onto this, like I said earlier. But again, as recently as last year, 2020, Quibi had it for a bit. Kiki Palmer is the host. Again, not familiar with them. What do I know about young people stuff these days?
Well, yeah. Well, what do you know about Quibi? Let's be honest. It's gone.
Well, it's gone now, so ain't nobody knowing nothing about it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I can't say that it's gone forever because obviously the original version was garbage and it lasted for as long as it did. It was very successful. Maybe it'll come back. I have to hold out hope that should it ever come back, it will just immediately fail catastrophically and be canceled.
You know, I don't know. I mean, you look at shows like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette that are killing it, and as long as there's crap like that, crap television like that, that is killing it.
But I feel like this is even a step below that. Like, at least The Bachelor and The Bachelorette have an air of reality television, and there's like a gravity to it, and they are trying to find compatibility. There's no attempt at compatibility in this show. It's literally just flip of a coin. Like, you could literally just go out there and say, pick a number 1 through 50. All right, cool. You go on a date with that person. That is as, complex as this game gets. Well, and like you said earlier, the outline of the rules of the game, it's not a bad idea, but it needs to be done in a way that if you're ending in a date, shouldn't it be done in some way that indicates that these people would be good on a date together?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, unfortunately, and it was what it was, and it was so popular, and I think it's a combination of different things, I believe at the time, you got Jenny McCarthy, who's hot. You've got, Chris Hardwick, who's like Mr. Popularity cool guy.
Uh-huh.
And you've got like the opportunity to like date one of 50 women if you're a guy, or one of 50 guys if you're a guy. So there's that appeal to it. Like, you wonder, like, oh, who would you choose? Oh, I want that one, that kind of thing. So when you're in that simplistic kind of frame of mind as a kid growing up, and I mean, I was out of high school at that point. I was gosh, in 95, 96, I was in the military at that point. But you're definitely watching it. You're enjoying it for what it is. I can't watch it now. It's a train wreck now.
Right.
Yeah,
I like, as much as I was the market audience for the show when it aired, it has not aged well, and I am not the market for it now, so maybe my opinion is irrelevant. I don't know. I'm not purporting to be some sort of, master declarer of what this show is. In my opinion, hot, stinky garbage.
Okay, well, that being said, we should probably rate the show.
Right.
If there is such a rating at all, if there's any rating whatsoever.
Right. I'm still sticking to my concept that there are no zeros, and the bump here is that Chris Hardwick is a good host.
Right.
Outside of that, I don't have anything good to say about this show, except for to say that it has improved my opinion of Bowling for Dollars. At least Bowling for... I will say the only thing Bowling for Dollars had going against it was that it was boring and not very well thought out, right?
Okay.
This is, like, offensively bad. So whatever I gave Bowling for Dollars, I am giving this half of that. So if I gave Bowling for Dollars a 0.25, this is getting a 0. Whatever, half.
125.
Right, yeah. So yeah, half of Bowling for Dollars is what this gets, and that's only because of Chris Hardwick. You swap him out for probably anyone else, and this show.
So you're essentially giving it a 0.25 pickers, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yep. 0.25 pickers.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
All right. I'm going to give it a 0.5 picker. And the reason is because I do think the premise, when read, sounds fun. And I mean, it sounds like it would be a great, if you pitched me the elevator pitch of this show, I'd be like, hell yeah, do it. Let's do it. This is great. But it just doesn't communicate. It doesn't come to fruition watching these old episodes. I'm just like, oh, God. But I do like the premise, so I'll give it a 0.5. That's about as best I can do.
I will say the premise sounds good for a parlor game at a swinger party.
There you go. Great. Well, jeez. All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for today.
Yes, indeed it is. Thank you, Tom, for all your insights. Thank you, Christian, for all of yours and for making us look like chumps every week. Thank you, Buzzerblog. Thank you, everyone who writes us. No thank you to those who give us low-star reviews.
There you go. Tune in again next time. We'll bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows, as well as a brand new featured show, too.
And remember, you can catch us online at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, tellthemwhatthey've.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, I hope you have to spend an eternity with Jenny McCarthy.
Oh, terrible. All right, Mike. See you next week.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
All right, Tom, what'd you learn this week?
I am now abundantly sure after this week that I totally hate all dating games for the most part.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I got to go rewatch Blind Date. That was one I liked a lot, but I'm sure that's just as bad as everything.
I don't even want to know. I worry when we have to do that, and I worry for Love Connection, and I worry for any of those other ones that we're going to have to do at some point.
Yep, I agree.
But we'll see. This was not for me. How about you? What did you learn this week?
This is not a thing I've learned this week. This is a thing I've learned my life. I hate commercials. Hate them. They are pandering and I don't know. Just I don't like them at all. I feel like they're almost insulting in a way.
Okay.
But I love old commercials, and I don't know why. But when I was watching these, they still had all the commercials intact, and a Winterfresh commercial came on, and I spoke along with the entire commercial. Like, not just the song, like all the lines that the people were saying. And I had not seen this commercial in 15 years, but just seeing it again, I was like, oh my God, the nostalgia. I say 15 years. It's probably been 25 years. There's something about the nostalgia of commercials that really triggers, or not triggers me, but gets me going.
Right, and as we've talked about before, the jingles just stick in your brain.
Yeah, apparently it's not just the jingles.
Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.